My Govanen. Welcome to the Tolkien Lore Channel and the Tolkien Geek, and continuing on with the series of ranking Tolkien-related memes. Well, this is part 4, and we got some interesting dark humor to start us off, and who knows what else, so let's get into it. Alright, so we got an image of Denethor saying, "You did what?" and Aragorn saying, "Send his body over a waterfall. Could be anywhere, really." And then Aragorn follows it up with, "I made sure to loot him for his bracers, though. Too nice to pass up." And then Denethor's got a close-up with his face just in an expression of absolute horror. Oh, man. Like I said, dark humor. It's, imagining that conversation happening. I mean, obviously, I don't think it would actually be that horrifying to Denethor the way that they gave him a burial under the circumstances. Although, on the other hand, he probably wouldn't have been happy about it either. So it is overall pretty funny, and it is a really good way of kind of making fun of the way that Aragorn takes his equipment in the movie, which is not a thing that happens in the book. And given that they literally send him off with all his equipment and the equipment of his enemies in the boat, it seems unlikely that Aragorn would do something like that in the book. So I gotta say, given the humor and the appropriateness, I've got to give this one a 9. All right, we've got an image of what looks like a woman with a hairdryer blowing into somebody's face who's sitting right in front of her, and it's like on fire. The caption says, "Dagor Bragalach, the Battle of Sudden Flame," and the woman holding the hairdryer is labeled Morgoth, and the person sitting down in front is labeled Elves and Men. Talk about sudden flame. And the woman, of course, is laughing in at least in the image. It looks like it could be a maniacal type of laugh. That one's pretty good, too. I think I'd give that one an 8. And then we've got an image of a woman on top saying, "I know a sound all men love," and then the bottom half of the image is Grond, the battering ram used in the Return of the King. I wonder if that's supposed to mean the chanting of Grond, or if it's supposed to mean the actual banging on the door. I don't know if this is like a common meme format with meaning that I should get otherwise, but to me this is not that funny. I mean, it's not horrible, but I mean, I'd give it like a 5 or a 6. Alright, we've got Pippin holding the Palantir from the movie and kind of writhing around. It says, "Pippin accidentally getting added to the Saruman Denethor group chat." I've seen this one several times before, and it's always funny. The idea that Saruman, and Denethor are all, kind of in meetings on the Palantir, and how awful that would be, and that's why Pippin is screaming and writhing. Just imagine the insanity that would go on in that group chat, right? It's obviously not exactly what's going on, and it never would have happened, but it is funny nonetheless, so I'll give it an 8. Alright, we got another Monty Python-based one. Old, crazy-looking guy says, "What is the Elvish word for friend?" And then King Arthur says, "What do you mean, Sindarin or Quenya Elvish?" And then the guy says, "I don't know that," and then he gets launched into the air. Of course, that is a great use of that meme, because, of course, it's obviously a reference to Melon, which is what's on what the answer to the, not exactly a riddle on the doors of Moria, but it's, out of context, you would have to ask the question, Sindarin or Quenya, and so, a book fan who isn't that deep into it, or a movie fan who really isn't that deep into it, might ask the question, and then a super fan might come along and be like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'll give that one an 8, too. Alright, we've got an image of, it looks like a drawing of Gimli. It says, "I've cried twice in my life, once a few days ago when I found Balin's tomb." Okay, it's Gimli. "And then again when Galadriel gave me 3 strands of her golden hair." I'm not exactly sure if this is supposed to be funny or what. I mean, if it is, I guess it's a joke about Gimli's over seriousness, or maybe like a making fun of a certain type of masculinity. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the point of this one is, but the artwork is fine. If somebody hand drew this, that's pretty good. But other than that, I mean, there's not that much to the meme, so I have a hard time giving it more than like a 3 or a 4. All right, we've got. Oh yeah, okay. So this is a Draco Malfoy meme. Red hair and a hand-down robe. You must be a Weasley. And it's one of the red-headed sons of Feanor, I assume, is who this is supposed to be, because it's clearly an adult with long hair and what looks like pointy ears. So I'm not sure what the hand-me-down robe is supposed to be a reference to, but which one was it that was red-headed of the Sons of Feanor? Was it? I forget which one. That's one of the details that I don't tend to remember that well, but I assume that's who it's a reference to. But it's kind of off because it's not that perfect an application of the idea, and so it is kind of funny, but it's also just kind of random. So I give that one like a 5. Okay, we've got good guy Oathkeepers on the left and evil Oathkeepers on the right. On the left, it looks like Feanor and his sons at the burning of the ships at Losgar. On the right, we've got a ghostly-looking man. On the left, we have thieves and murderers, massacred innocent Teleri for no reason, claim they are enemies of Morgoth, yet they destroy every major enemy of his with some lazy excuse, took the bloodthirsty oath of a megalomaniac without questions, needed Vanyar, Teleri, Sindri, Edain, and very rare-based Noldor to save them before half the surviving members decided to just commit suicide. Boring-looking twinks, obsessed with some stupid rocks, I don't know, failed to fulfill their oath. And in the evil Oathbreakers, it says, humble hunters and farmers. Haters claim they serve Sauron, yet all they did was not march to war for genocidal colonizers. Pressured into taking their oaths after colonizers surrounded their lands with no way to escape if they decided to deal with them like every other Daean group? Expulsion and genocide? I don't know, maybe that's a typo. Helped an incompetent inbreed protect his kingdom out of pity. What? No, I'm not going to read that part. At the end, they actually fulfilled the oath they were forced to take. I mean, when they say good guy Oathbreakers, who's reading the Silmarillion and thinking Feanor and his sons are the good guys? Also, I mean, a lot of this stuff on here is kind of messed up. Like, humble hunters and farmers is what the evil Oathbreakers are supposed to be. How do we know that? Also, it says all they did was not march to war for genocidal colonizers. The faithful who came to Gondor were not genocidal colonizers. I don't know what this is. Like, it's trying to be funny and make it extreme, but it has to go to such great lengths and basically ignore a lot of what people actually know about these people to the point that it's trying too hard to make something out of nothing, I think. And I can't really give it more than like a 2 or a 3 for that reason. Alright, we've got a Princess Bride meme. This one should be good. So it's got Inigo Montoya and the man in black talking. It says, Mr. Frodo was slaughtered by an 8-legged monster. He was a great master, my Mr. Frodo. The next time we meet, I will not fail. I will go up to the 8-legged monster and say, hello, my name is Samwise Gamgee. You killed Mr. Frodo. Prepare to die. That's pretty good. It's not the greatest, but it is pretty good. I think I'd give that one a 7. Alright, we've got Celeborn and Gimli, and Celeborn says, where is Gandalf? Gimli says, he fell. Where is Aragorn? He fell. Where is the Westfold? And then it just shows both of their faces back and forth, silent for a couple things, and then Gimli says he fell. This, of course, is based off of the scene where Gimli tells Eowyn, that he fell, meaning Aragorn. Uh, and it's referring to the fact that Gandalf fell, Aragorn fell, the Westfold fell, because Theoden asks Aragorn, "Where was Gondor when the Westfold fell?" Oh, man. And it's also playing off of that "Tell me where is Gandalf, or I much desire to speak with him" that gets memed to death. That's... I think I'll give that one an 8. That one was pretty good. Alright, we've got several images involving... Okay, I see what this is doing. Alright, we got several images of Sam and Frodo across the whole trilogy of movies, starting in the Shire and ending on the slopes of Mount Doom. The first one says, Mr. Frodo, taters are the food of the Shire. You can boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. There's baked potatoes, potato cakes, potatoes au gratin, hash browns, funeral potatoes, potato crisps, potato salad, potato wedges. That's about it. And for those of you who don't know, and if you don't, you're missing out. This is obviously taken from Forrest Gump, because the guy he meets in the army, who goes by Bubba, but I forget his full name, but it's like some ridiculous long name, and then but people call me Bubba. Forrest Gump says, "My name's Forrest Gump." People call me Forrest Gump. But the guy wants to buy his own shrimp boat, and there's this scene where it's a montage of them together doing different things, cleaning the floor and whatever, and he's talking about all the different things you can make with shrimp. And so this is doing the same thing with Sam and potatoes, because, potatoes... Appropriately, I am actually wearing this shirt, and that was not even on purpose. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. So, yeah, that's pretty good. I think I'll give that one an 8 or a 9. And no, really, I'm wearing this shirt by accident. I just took the shirt that was the first one off the rack. Alright, we've got Nikola Tesla as played by David Bowie from the movie The Prestige. And in the first image it says, Peter Jackson after making Lord of the Rings. First time I tried to change the world, I was hailed as a visionary. Peter Jackson after making The Hobbit. Second time I was asked politely to retire. This, of course, is that's a paraphrase of his line from The Prestige. And it is obviously referring to the fact that Peter Jackson got all kinds of praise for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but then he made The Hobbit, and everybody was kind of down on it. Not everybody, but a lot of people very heavily criticized The Hobbit. That's a pretty good use of that line from that movie, but it's not hugely funny, so I think I'd give that one a 7. All right, looks like we've got something from Forged in Fire, the show where they make all kinds of different things and test them. And the host or whoever is saying, Bladesmiths, your challenge today. And then the second image is the shards of Narsil. Is to reforge the shards of Narsil, the sword that was broken. I mean, that's, not a huge joke or anything. It's kind of, an appropriate way to use the Forged in Fire, I guess. But it's not, like, a particularly interesting meme. I give it maybe a 5. Alright, we've got a Duolingo thing saying, looks like you forgot your Quenya lessons again. You know what happens now, and it shows the kinslaying at Alqualande. With a bunch of Duolingo owls in the middle of Feanor's army. It's a little harsh retribution for forgetting your language lesson. And I guess the extra layer to this joke is the fact that the Teleri didn't really keep up with the language changes that went on between the Vanyar and the Noldor, who were actually living in, Valinor proper, whereas they stayed mostly on the coast and kind of kept with a little closer to their original language. So I guess that's an extra layer to this joke. So it's kind of an interestingly deep joke. It's also, again, kind of dark humor. I think I'd probably give this one a 7. All right, we've got one of those Winnie the Pooh memes where it starts off with him just looking kind of lazy and then has him dressed up in a tux. So the first one, be he foe or friend, be he foul or clean, brood of Morgoth or bright Vala, Elda or Maya or aftercomer, man yet unborn upon Middle-earth, neither law nor love, nor league of swords, dread nor danger, nor doom itself, shall defend him from Feanor and Feanor's kin. Whoso hideth or hoardeth or in hand taketh, finding keepeth, or at afar casteth a Silmaril, this swear we all, death we will deal him ere day's ending. Woe unto world's end, our word hear thou, the Eru Allfather, to the everlasting darkness doom us if our deed faileth. On the holy mountain here in witness, and our vow remember Manwë and Varda. And that's the, Pooh kind of just looking like, whatever. And then the second one is Pooh with the tuxedo looking much happier, and it says, if you steal a Silmaril, you get the Kilmaril. I mean, obviously the first version is better because it's basically alliterative verse, and Tolkien was good at that sort of thing. But it is kind of funny that Pooh goes in for the ridiculous version of this. And that's a take off of something. I don't remember for sure what it is, but it rings a bell in my memory. I almost think it's a reference to, is it The Silence of the Lambs, where what's-her-name gets trapped by the suspect, and he says something. I forget exactly what it is. If it makes noise again, it gets the hose, or I forget exactly the line, but I wonder if that's kind of what that last one is based on. It's funny. It's, I think, backwards in the sense that clearly it's going from better to worse and acting like it's the other way around, but that I think is probably part of the joke. So probably give this one a 7 or 8. Oh gosh. Okay, we've got Thor from the MCU, is played by Chris Hemsworth. And the first image is him all, ripped and everything. It says Elves in the Silmarillion, and then Elves in the Hobbit is him in his fat suit. Just with growed out hair and beard. I get what it's trying to say, but I don't think that comparison is the comparison I would use for that joke. The elves in The Hobbit come off as silly, not as drunk, fat, idiots. So I don't know that I would exactly use that meme format for that, but you still get the point, so I'd probably give it a 6. Alright, we've got a Bernie Sanders meme, and Bernie is labeled as Valar and says, I am once again asking for the Silmarils. And in the bottom image is Feanor, which is actually Isildur from the movies, where Elrond says to cast it into the fire, and he says, no! Which, fun fact, if you didn't know, that's actually Hugo Weaving's voice saying no. So that's a pretty good use of the meme, because obviously, the Valar kind of really gave Feanor a lot of chances, and Feanor was just not having it. And using Isildur from the prologue of the Lord of the Rings movies is pretty good. Probably give that one a 7, maybe even an 8. Alright, we've got what Frodo sees and what the Barrow-wight sees. And, okay, so it looks like the top image is a drawing of Frodo seeing the Barrow-wight, and then the second image is Frodo kind of with a silly grin on his face behind what I assume is supposed to be I don't assume, it's obviously supposed to be a representation of Tom Bombadil. I just don't know exactly where this image comes from. I think I've seen it in the context of, I can't remember now, but it's some guy wearing a suit with, kind of a really round face, and somebody drew a Tom Bombadil hat on top of it. So, Frodo gets terrified, and then Tom Bombadil, as goofy as he is, comes in and just banishes the Barrow Whites. Probably give that one a 7, just because the humor there is pretty decent. Okay, this is an image of a woman surrounded by lots of plates of stacks of pancakes. The caption at the top says, "Hi, my name is what? My name is who? My name is Chicka Chicka." And then she's surrounded by all these plates, and it's Turambar, Adonafel, Dagnir Glaurung, Wild Men of the Woods, Gorthal, Nathan, Turindo, Mormagil, Agarwine, Turin, Conqueror of Fate, Slayer of Glaurung, Master of Fate, the Wronged, the Dreaded Helm, Elfman, the Secret, Bloodstained, Son of Ill Fate, Black Sword, Master of Doom, Glaurung's Bane, Evil Fated. So it's just referring to the fact that Turin has all these names that he gives himself or is given by others over the course of the story, and it's also including like even some earlier versions of his names that aren't in the final version of the story, it looks like, because I think Turindo is like an earlier version. Not, I don't think that's in either the long version that we get in the Children of Húrin or the Silmarillion version. So that's pretty good use of that meme, I think. I'd give that one 7 or an 8 probably. Alright, we've got Éomer with the 3 hunters. Éomer says, "The white wizard is cunning. He walks here and there, they say, as an old man, hooded and cloaked. And everywhere his spies slip past our nets." And then the bottom image is not Aragorn. It is Saruman wearing the classic false nose and glasses disguise. That's and it's just, the humor here is entirely in the unexpected turn of events at the bottom. It's absurd, but it is just funny just because of the surprise. I probably give that one a 7. All right, we've got Van Helsing, and I forget the name of the guy that David Wenham plays in the Van Helsing movie. But Van Helsing says, the other character played by David Wenham says, "Father, I brought you a Van Helsing." And then Denethor says, "Boromir would have brought me Wolverine." Of course, played by the same actor. And it's making a joke about the fact that Van Helsing was not nearly as popular as his role as Wolverine. Gosh, I can't remember his name, and that makes me mad. I actually kind of like the Van Helsing movie. Some of the stuff in there is kind of cheesy, but the meme here is pretty good. It's of course the same Denethor ragging on Faramir over and over and over again, and it's using the fact that David Wenham plays 2 different characters in fairly well-known movies. Would have brought me a Wolverine. I think I'll give that one an 8. Okay, we've got ourselves another Princess Bride meme. It is the man in black sitting down with Vizzini, who is holding his dagger up to the Princess Buttercup's face. The man in black is labeled as Bilbo and says, "Let me explain." And then Vizzini, who is Smaug, is holding the princess, who is labeled as Arkenstone, and says, "There's nothing to explain. You're trying to kidnap what I've rightfully stolen." So it's, yeah. You may remember I did a similar one, maybe in the first video in this series, which I think screwed up the "there's nothing to explain" and gave that part of the line to the man in black. And that kind of ruined it because it made it kind of confusing. This one properly does it, and it's, Smaug and the Arkenstone makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, this one actually kind of works. It's not perfect, but it's at least a 7, maybe an 8. All right, we've got Frodo, Sam, and Gollum in the dead marshes, and Gollum is doing his "we must starve" thing. And it says, "My cat, after being fed for the 50th time." Being is misspelled in the meme, but nevertheless, the point is obvious. "We must starve!" After being fed for the 50th time. Yeah, I that can apply to a lot of people, like young children, too. "I have fed you breakfast, a mid-morning snack, lunch, an afternoon snack, and it's like an hour after the afternoon snack, and you're hungry. Why?" That's pretty good. Probably I'd give that one a 7. Another Princess Bride meme, but this time it's at the very end where they're about to jump out the window and escape from the castle, and the Dread Pirate Roberts is talking to Legolas. And Legolas says, I have been in Lord of the Rings filming so long, now that it's over, I don't know what to do with the rest of my life. And of course, Wesley says, have you ever considered piracy? You'd make a wonderful pirate in the Caribbean. And then it's Legolas. It's not Legolas anymore. It's, of course, now it's Will Turner from Pirates of the Caribbean saying, this is either madness or brilliance. Which is, whoever put that together was pretty clever. I mean, that works really well. I gotta say, just on the creativity putting that together, I'd have to give it at least an 8, maybe even a 9. Okay, so here we've got, and I don't know which movie this comes from, but it's a World War II movie where Guy gets basically caught as a spy because when he raises his hand to do 3, he does it the way that Americans do with the first 3 fingers, as opposed to the first 2 fingers and the thumb. And he is the one doing the fingers is labeled dwarfs in quotation marks, and the one who notices that he's doing it wrong is labeled dwarves. And this, of course, is a joke about the fact that Tolkien, knowing that the proper English plural is dwarfs, nevertheless just wrote dwarves because he's like, this is really probably the proper plural if you go back historically. And when the editor tried to change it, even though it might have just been a typo on his own part, was like, no, let's keep it dwarfs. And had a whole lot of fights with the editors over that. So it's pretty good. It's a little over the top, but probably give it a 6 or 7. Alright, we've got Saruman and Theoden and Gandalf and Aragorn talking at the when they come to Isengard and whatnot. So I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. And then Saruman at the very top says, are those hobbits? Where did you get hobbits? And then Theoden says, we found them. Saruman says, what, in Isengard? Hobbits are rural. This is an industrial zone. Gandalf says, can the Ents not cross Fangorn or the Uruk-hai from kingdom to kingdom? Saruman says, are you suggesting that hobbits migrate? And then Aragorn says, not at all. They were carried. I don't know if this is supposed to be like a reference to something. I have a feeling it's supposed to be a reference to something that I either don't know or am not remembering. It sounds vaguely Monty Python-ish, but I don't have any specific memory of something like this. So there may be a joke here that I'm not getting. As it stands, it doesn't seem that funny to me, but if it's based on a joke, it's probably going to deserve a much higher rating that I could give it. So I'm just kind of going to leave this one for everybody else watching. And if you know what this is a reference to, please explain in the comments so I can get the joke if there is one. Alright, we've got, it looks like it's the scene from when Pippin is often in the building looking at the Palantir, but Aragorn and Legolas are outside looking at the stars. And it looks like Legolas is actually Jeff Goldblum's character from Jurassic Park, maybe. But he says, ooh, shivers, did you feel it? Something in the air, a breeze perhaps? No, this feels, malevolent. Evil, to put it simply. As if we were being watched. Perceived, you could say. And this unknown, viewer seems to be, are you ready for this? Sauron! And then Aragorn says, damn it, Jeffalis, get to the point next time. Pippin is stroking out. I don't know. It may not be Jurassic Park. Where did Jeff Goldblum give a line like that? I can't think of it. But, I mean, the joke is obvious nonetheless. The point is he's rambling on and on and on, and he's not getting to the point. Meanwhile, Pippin is inside screaming his head off. So that's pretty good. I'll give that one a 7. Alright, we've got Shadowfax galloping across the plain, and then again we have Jeff Goldblum as Legolas. Oh ho, look at that. That right there, so majestic. That right there is one of the Maeras, a remarkable breed of horse. We are truly privileged. Yes, privileged, unless my elf eyes, as you may recall, are being cheated by some spell. So it's the same idea. I think if I have a feeling I've got more of these coming up, but it's that same idea of just like really droning on about something instead of just being direct and to the point. And in fairness, the fact that I'm going to see like a few of these probably, because I can already see the thumbnail for the next one, it looks like another, and I remember there being a few, is going to make it hard to give these any kind of a really decent rating. But this one is less funny anyway because it doesn't have Aragorn, kind of coming back at him. But it's, probably a 5 maybe for this one. All right, Jeff Goldblum is Legolas, and this time it's Aragorn and Legolas in Minas Tirith, and they're talking about their plan to distract Sauron. Aragorn says, "We can give Frodo his chance if we keep Sauron's eye fixed upon us, keep him blind to all else that moves." And then Jephalis says, "Ah, yes, yes, blind. Let Frodo move undetected, move through Mordor, like a shadow. So we march up 1, up 2 to the Black Gate and act as a diversion?" It's getting less funny every time I see it. So it's like 5 again because it's kind of similar to the last one. Somebody really went hog wild with these because now it's Legolas pointing his bow at Éomer. Éomer says, "I would cut off your head, dwarf, if it stood but a little higher from the ground." Jephalis says, Now, don't be so hasty, my friend. Haste is waste. Waste not, want not, but you would die. Yes, die before your stroke fell. That is, of course, implying that I will shoot this arrow into your, oh, so many choices, tongue trilling." I mean, that one I think is a little bit more funny just because in the context it's more absurd, so I might give that one a 6. All right, now it's Celeborn and Legolas. "Tell me, where is Gandalf, for I much desire to speak with him." "Gandalf, yes, yes, where is Gandalf? Gandalf the, wizard, Gandalf the Grey. Well, Gandalf, such an amazing guy for doing this too, was taken. Yes, taken by both Shadow and, Flame. You heard that right, Shadow and Flame, and that's because it was, hold on to your cloaks, a Balrog, yes, a Balrog of Morgoth." Again, I might give this one a 6 just because it's like kind of similar to the last one where it's just so absurd. Somebody really, really wanted to do a lot of these. Now it's Aragorn and Legolas at the Council of Elrond, and Legolas stands up and says, "This is no mere ranger. He is, you're gonna love this, he is Aragorn. Yes, yes, Aragorn, son of," big reveal, son of Arathorn. Thank you, Jephalis. You can sit down now." I mean, I think this one is more funny than it should be because it's coming at after so many of these that I feel Aragorn's frustration at this point. But I think I'm just going to stick with giving it a 6, although it might stretch to a 7. I think I've got one or two more of these before I get through all the Jeff Goldblum ones. I'm going to finish them out for this. All right, it's Aragorn and Legolas during the chase of the Uruk-hai, and Aragorn says, "Jephalis, what do your elf eyes see?" "Ah, yes, my elf eyes. Eyes. I spy with my little eye. The Uruks turning to the northeast. They're taking the hobbits, Merry and Pippin, as we all remember. They're taking the hobbits to Isengard." Again, not that. It's like maybe 5, 6. All right, I think this is the actual last one, and it's Gandalf, and this time Jeff Goldblum is in the role of Saruman instead of Legolas. Gandalf says, "You're implying a group composed of orcs and goblins will breed?" And then Jeff Goldblum says, "I'm simply saying that life finds a way." That's clearly a reference to the Jurassic Park Jeff Goldblum, because life finds a way is like his thing for, you playing around with life is dangerous. Because the whole point in Jurassic Park, if I remember right, it's been a while since I saw the movie, was that they were supposed to all be sterile and couldn't breed, and yet they did. So it's not that funny because obviously orcs and goblins breed. Like, where do they come from if they don't? So it kind of falls a little flat because of the nonsense nature of Gandalf's question. That being said, I think I'd have to give it maybe a 4. But that was the last of the Jeff Goldblum ones, so I think I will call it there. I actually went a little more than I expected to in this one. I was going to try to cut it close to 30, but I think I got to 32 or so. Some of these were really good. The Jeff Goldblum's ones were I think somebody just really finds Jeff Goldblum funny, but that's not necessarily my cup of tea. Nevertheless, we had a pretty good group of them in this one, and I'm probably going to get at least 2 more out of this before I'm done, because I think I still have more than 60 left. So that'll wrap it for this week. Again, if you enjoyed the chuckles, please do give the video a thumbs up, share it around, especially with anybody else who could use a nice Tolkien-related laugh. Make sure to subscribe to catch my future content. If you're on YouTube, click the bell icon so you don't miss any notifications. Follow me on the platform formerly known as Twitter for Tolkien-related trivia questions every week, and check the description below for other support and social links. Until the next time, I am the Tolkien Geek, signing out for the Tolkien Lore Channel. Namarie. Thanks to all my channel supporters, especially Ringbearer Grubermo and elf friends Nathan Dufour and Robert Kindling.